Moses asked God his name, and God gave the strangest answer in the history of religion. Not a title, not a throne name, not the kind of answer you could carve onto a stone tablet and hand to a crowd of frightened slaves and say, "Here, this is who sent me." God could have said Almighty. God could have said Creator. God could have said Eternal Ruler of heaven and earth. But God did not say any of those things. Instead, he reached into the deepest mystery of his own existence, past every human category and every human limitation. And he spoke 3 words in Hebrew that have baffled philosophers, confounded theologians, and quietly undone people who were desperate enough to actually sit with them. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I am that I am. Or, as many scholars now tell us, even closer to its original meaning, I will be what I will be. Pay attention to the next sentence. That single answer, given on the backside of a desert mountain to a fugitive shepherd standing in front of a bush that would not stop burning, contains something most people have never been shown. And once you see it, it will change the way you pray, the way you wait, and the way you understand who is actually with you in the middle of whatever you are going through right now. Before we go any further, I want you to do something. If this teaching is already speaking to something inside you, type the words "I will be with you" in the comment section right now, not as a slogan, as a declaration, because by the end of this, you are going to understand what those 5 words mean at a depth you have never touched. Like this video and subscribe so that teachings like this keep finding you. You did not stumble onto this by accident. You were led here, and there is a reason the Spirit brought you to this particular word on this particular day. Now let us go back. Let us go all the way back. Picture someone who has spent 40 years trying to forget who they are. 40 years is a long time to run, long enough for the urgency to fade, for the old wounds to scar over, for the dreams you once had to stop visiting you in the night, long enough that you have almost convinced yourself this is all you are. Now a hired hand in someone else's field, tending someone else's animals, living on the edge of a wilderness that has no name on any map that matters. That is where Moses was. He had been a prince. He had walked the halls of the most powerful empire on earth. He had seen the pyramids not as a tourist, but as someone who ate at the same table as the men who built them. And then, in one violent moment, one act of justice or of rage, depending on who you asked, everything collapsed. He fled. He ran to the desert land of Midian. He married, had children, built a quiet life beside the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro, and 40 years went by. 40 years. The children of Israel were still enslaved in Egypt. The groaning continued. The bricks kept being made without enough straw, and Moses kept walking behind the flock, day after day, moving the animals toward wherever the water was, and moving them away from wherever it was not. Some of you know this feeling. Not the Egyptian bondage, but the other thing, the sense that your life has contracted down to something small and manageable and entirely disconnected from whatever it was you once believed you were made for. You got up this morning and made the coffee and answered the messages and kept the routine moving. And somewhere underneath all of it, underneath the efficiency and the ordinary hours, something in you is still waiting, still listening, still not quite convinced that this is the whole story. Are you tired of waiting for something you cannot even name anymore? Have you started to suspect that God has forgotten where you are? Do you feel like the version of yourself that still believed in the impossible has been buried so long that even you cannot find it? Listen to me. That feeling is not the absence of God. That feeling is what the desert always feels like right before the bush starts burning. And that is exactly where Moses was when it happened. Scripture tells us in Exodus chapter 3 that Moses led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from within a bush. The bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. This is important. This is the first message. Before God even speaks a word, the fire was in the bush, but the bush did not burn up. In the ancient world, fire meant presence. Fire meant holiness. Fire meant power that was too large to be contained by ordinary matter. But this fire did not destroy what it touched. It revealed it. It illuminated it. It burned within it without consuming it. God was telling Moses something about his own nature before the conversation even began. I am a fire that does not destroy what I inhabit. I am a holiness that does not consume what I enter. I am a presence that can be fully in you without burning you to nothing. That changes everything. Moses could have walked past that bush. Scripture even captures his decision in real time. He said, I will turn aside now and see this remarkable sight. He chose to look. He made a decision to stop the routine and investigate the interruption. And when God saw that Moses had turned aside to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses, not a category, not a title, his name, twice. The repetition of a name in ancient Hebrew literature always signals urgency, intimacy, and appointment. God did not say, Hey, you, shepherd. God said his name. The way you say the name of someone you have been watching carefully for a long time, someone you have been preparing for a moment you already knew was coming. And Moses said, Here I am. That is the first thing Moses says in this entire encounter. Here I am. It is the same phrase Abraham used when God called him. It is the same phrase Isaiah used when the voice of God said, Who shall I send? Here I am is not merely a statement of location. It is a statement of availability. It is the sound a person makes when they stop running. God told Moses to take off his sandals because the place where he was standing was holy ground. Then God identified himself as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then God explained everything. I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cry. I have come down to deliver them, and I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out. And Moses, who had spent 40 years becoming invisible, said the most human thing in the world. He said, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh? Notice what God does not do. God does not answer the question. God does not make a case for Moses based on Moses. Instead, God says something completely different. He says, I will be with you. Read that again, slowly. I will be with you. The answer to who am I is not an explanation of Moses. The answer is a declaration about God. Your qualification for the impossible is not your resume. It is not your history. It is not what you know or what you have survived or how long you have waited. Your qualification is the presence of the one who sends you. But Moses is not done with his questions. And here is where we arrive at the center of everything this teaching is about. Moses says in Exodus chapter 3, verse 13, When I come to the Israelites and I say to them, The God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? This is not a simple question. In the ancient world, a name was not just a label. A name was an identity. And natur, a declaration of character and power. The gods of Egypt all had names that told you exactly what they were for, what they governed, what you could ask of them and what you could not. A god with a name was a god you could approach with a specific request, a god whose domain you could map, whose limits you could understand. Moses was asking, in the language of his world, what kind of God are you? What is the shape of you? What are the limits of your jurisdiction? What do I tell them about who exactly is sending me? And God said to Moses, Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. I am that I am. 3 words in Hebrew, or more precisely, 1 repeated verb and the connective particle Asher between them. Ehyeh is the first-person singular imperfect form of the Hebrew verb Ehyeh, which means to be, to exist, to become, because biblical Hebrew did not distinguish grammatical tenses the way English does. Ehyeh can mean I am, I was, or I will be. All of those meanings live inside a single form. Listen carefully to what God actually said. Underneath the translation, He said, I exist as I exist. My nature is my own nature. My being is defined by my being. There is no external reference point for who I am. There is no category large enough to contain me. There is no question that can frame me. There is no name that can put a fence around me. This is not evasion. This is revelation. Every name we have for God is true, but it is also partial. Almighty tells you about power. Creator tells you about origin. Shepherd tells you about care. Father tells you about relationship. Each of these names is a window into God, but no window is the whole house. And every window we look through is a window that a human mind built, with human materials, in a human-sized frame. But Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh is different. It is not a window. It is the refusal to be reduced to a window. It is God saying, I am not a noun. I am not a category. I am the verb underneath every verb, the existence behind every existence, the being from which all being flows. And you cannot put me in a name the way you put a God in a jar, because I was not made and I cannot be contained. Not a wish, not a title, not a department of the divine, a declaration of absolute, uncaused, unlimited, uncontainable being. And then, in the very same verse, God says something even more stunning. He says, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Not I was, not I will be. I am. Present tense. Active. Right now. In the middle of the slavery, in the middle of the mud and the straw and the impossible quotas and the children crying and the backs broken and the prayers that seem to bounce off the sky and fall back down unanswered, I am, right now, has sent me. Some of you need to receive that sentence not as ancient history but as a word for your present moment. Because I want to ask you something. When you pray, which tense do you use for God? Do you pray to the God who showed up for your mother or your grandmother? The God of testimonies and of the past? Do you pray to the God who will come through eventually? The future God? The God you are waiting on? Or do you know how to speak to the God who is present tense, active, already in the room with you, already in the fire that is not consuming you? The name Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh carries all 3, past, present, and future all live inside that single imperfect form. Some of the earliest Jewish commentators, reflecting on this verse, understood the name as pointing to a God who encompasses what was, what is, and what will be, simultaneously, all at once, as a single, unbroken reality. That is not a philosophical abstraction. That is a pastoral promise. It means that the God who was with Abraham in the moment of his greatest test is the same God who is with you and yours. Not a similar God, not a God of the same type. The same one, the unchanged one. Because change requires time. And God is not inside time the way we are. God is the one who made time, which means God stands outside of it, looking at every moment of your life the way you might look at a photograph, seeing the beginning and the end and everything in between. Not sequentially, but all at once. This is why God's answer to the question of who are you is, I will be what I will be. It is not only a statement about God's eternal nature, it is a promise. It is God saying, I will be whatever you need me to be, in the moment you need it, in the form you can receive it. I was the ram in the thicket for Abraham. I was the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night for your ancestors. I was the still small voice for the prophet who ran to the desert in despair. And I will be what you need, in the language your moment requires, in the shape your wilderness is calling for. Because I am not limited to one form of showing up. That is the answer God gave Moses. And then God said, go and tell them I am sent you. Now, centuries later, on the other side of the sacred story, in a temple courtyard in Jerusalem, a man from Nazareth stands in front of a crowd and says something that those who heard it immediately understood as either the most magnificent truth or the most spectacular blasphemy anyone had ever spoken in that city. He says, in John chapter 8, verse 58, truly, truly I tell you, before Abraham was, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. Not I was. Not I existed. I am. The same construction, the same echo, the same name. And the people who heard it understood the claim immediately. They picked up stones, not because they were confused, because they were not. They understood exactly what was being said. That the presence speaking through the burning bush, the one who said Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh to a trembling shepherd on the backside of a desert, was the same presence standing in front of them in that courtyard, looking them in the eyes. You can engage with the theological conclusion in any number of ways. That is between you and the Spirit. But do not miss the linguistic thread. The name from the burning bush is the name that could not be silenced, could not be contained, and could not be imprisoned in the ordinary limits of any human category, including the category of time itself. Before Abraham was, I am. I will be what I will be. Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, the same declaration, 3,000 years apart. The fire that does not consume what it enters. Now I want to give you something practical, because the theology is alive and beautiful and it matters. But it matters most when it changes the way you actually live. And here is what I believe the name Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh is supposed to do inside a human life. It is supposed to cure a particular sickness that most people who love God are carrying without knowing it. The sickness of a small God. Not small in the theological sense. Most people would never say they believe in a small God. They would tell you God is infinite and almighty and sovereign. They believe this. But then they go home and they worry the way someone worries when no one powerful is watching. They lose sleep the way someone loses sleep when the outcome is genuinely uncertain. They pray with a kind of desperate, apologetic energy, as if they are making a petition to someone who might be busy or who might have run out of what is needed for a situation like theirs. That is the sickness of a small God. And Ehyeh Asher, Ehyeh is the cure. Because if God is I am, if God's name is present tense, active being, then there is no moment in your life where God is absent. There is no corner of your situation that God has not already occupied. There is no need that is outside God's jurisdiction, because God's jurisdiction is existence itself. God is not rushing toward your problem from a distance. God is already in it, the way the fire was already in the bush, without consuming it, without leaving it, without needing to be summoned. Let me also say something about the word Asher, that small connecting particle sitting between the two Ehyehs, the one usually translated as that or who. Asher is doing something subtle and enormous at the same time. It draws a connection without limiting it. When God says Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, He is not saying I am this specific kind of I am. He is saying I am, and everything that flows from that I am is wholly and completely I am. The connection is total. There is no part of God's being that is separate from or inconsistent with His being. He is not compassionate on some days and absent on others. He is not generous in one season and withholding in the next. The Asher says the I am is complete, consistent, unified, whole. That matters for your prayers on the days when God feels contradictory. The days when the mercy you experienced last year seems absent this year. The days when you cannot reconcile the God of the promise with the God of the delay. Ehyeh Asher, Ehyeh says there is no contradiction inside God. There is only your vantage point, which is inside time, trying to make sense of a God who is outside it. From inside a river, the river looks one way. From above the river, from the place where you can see the whole course from source to mouth and every bend between, the river makes a different kind of sense. You are standing inside the river. God is standing above it, and the God above it is saying, this is not contradiction. This is a bend, and bends in rivers are how rivers get to where they are going. Now, here is what I want you to practice. Not a religious formula, a way of thinking that rewires everything if you return to it consistently. The first movement is this: learn to meet God in the present tense. Most of us do our most honest talking to God in one of two tenses. We go to the past. God, you did this. God, you showed up then. Remind yourself and God of the historical track record. Or we go to the future. God, please do this. God, I am asking you to come through. Both of these prayers are real. Both of them are valid. But there is a third conversation, and most people never have it. The present tense conversation. God, you are here right now. Not were, not will be. Are, right here. In this breath, in this room, in this pain, in this confusion, in this waiting, you are here. You are I am, and I am standing on holy ground, even if it looks like the backside of a desert. Start there. Every morning, before the day fills up with its noise and velocity, take 60 seconds and say, you are here, you are present, you are I am. Let that sentence do its work before anything else gets its hands on your attention. The second movement is this: refuse to define God by the limits of your last experience with Him. Moses had spent 40 years in the desert, and God had said nothing he could hear. And then the bush burned. God had not been absent during those 40 years. God had been preparing, and when the moment came, God did not show up as Moses expected. God showed up as fire in a bush, which was not on any list of possible divine manifestations that Moses had been keeping. God will be what he will be. He is not constrained by the form he used last time. He is not required to answer in the language you prayed in. He will show up in the form that fits the work he is doing. And sometimes it will look so ordinary that you will almost walk past it. You will almost say, "That is just a bush. That cannot be the burning." And then you will turn aside and look, and he will call your name. And everything will change. Stop limiting God to the shape of your history. Ehyeh, Asher. Ehyeh means he is always going to exceed your definition of him. The third movement is this: let I am be the answer to your deepest who am I. Moses asked God, "Who am I?" And God answered, "I will be with you." The answer to the question of your identity is not found in your past or your performance or your failures or your accomplishments. The answer to who you are is found in whose presence you carry. Moses was Moses because I am was with Moses. If the God who names himself as uncaused, unconstrained, unlimited, presentancy, past and future holding existence has declared that he will be with you, then who are you? You are someone I am is with. That is the only answer that finally holds. Not your wounds, not your reputation, not your diagnosis or your record. I am is with you, and no external verdict can revoke that declaration. Because the one who made it is not inside any system that has the authority to revoke it. The fourth movement is this: pray from a place of alignment, not information. Many people pray as though God is a distant authority who needs to be briefed before he can respond. So the prayer sounds like a case filing. Lord, here is what is happening. Here is the context. Here is what I think needs to happen and in what order and by what deadline. This is honest prayer. It is not wrong prayer, but it is prayer that has not yet been transformed by the name Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. Prayer that understands I am sounds different. It begins not with a briefing but with an acknowledgement. You are here. You are already in this. You see what I see and you saw it before I saw it. You are not behind. You are not surprised. Then the prayer can shift from informing God to aligning with God. Not Lord, make this happen, but Lord, I trust what you are doing. Not Lord, why have you not fixed this yet? But Lord, what are you building in this? Not Lord, I need you to show up. But Lord, I know you are already here. Help my eyes to see where. Prayer does not move God from somewhere else into your situation. Prayer aligns you with a God who was already in your situation before the prayer began. That is not a small difference. That is an entirely different relationship to prayer, to waiting, and to the feeling that God is late. God is not late. God is I am, and I am, exists outside the timeline that makes lateness possible. Now, I want to speak to someone who is in a particular kind of wilderness, not a figurative wilderness, a real one, the kind where the prayers have been going up a long time and the answers have not come in the form you expected or the timing you needed, the kind where you have watched people around you move forward while you seem to stay still, the kind where you have started to secretly wonder whether the promises you believed for your life were real or whether you misread the whole thing and now you are too far in, too old, too marked by what happened, too much time gone. And someone watching this right now, you know, this is for you. Because the moment you heard me start to describe it, something in your chest moved. Something that had been very still and very careful for a very long time shifted just slightly, and you almost pushed that feeling back down because you have been disappointed before. And being disappointed from a height is worse than never hoping at all. I want you to hear what the name Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh says to that place in you. The God who is I Am sees every tense of your life simultaneously. He sees the moment you first believed and the moment you most doubted, and every day in between, and the day that is coming that you cannot see yet. And He has not moved. He has not reassigned your promise to someone more worthy. He has not gotten tired of the length of your particular wilderness. The God who kept the bush burning without consuming it can keep a promise burning inside you without it going to ash. That fire does not go out on His end. Go back to Exodus chapter 3 for a moment. After Moses pushes back 5 separate times, each objection rooted in the same quiet terror. God did not revoke the calling because Moses was afraid. He met every fear with something specific. He turned a staff into a serpent. He gave signs Moses could carry. He promised that Aaron would speak alongside him. God answered every single objection, not because Moses earned the patience, but because the God who names Himself as I will be what I will be had already accounted for the fear and had already prepared what Moses needed for the moment he finally said yes. Some of you have been in the Moses conversation for a long time. You have heard the call. You know you heard it. But the objections have been running on repeat. Who am I to do this? What if I fail publicly? What if I have waited so long the moment has passed? And the Lord has been patient with every single one of those objections, patient in a way that does not look like patience from the inside, because from the inside it looks like nothing happening. But from the outside, from the angle of eternity, it looks exactly like a God giving you time to run out of objections before He puts the rod back in your hand. You are almost out of objections. The fear is still there. It will probably always be there in some form. Moses was afraid at the burning bush, and Moses was afraid at the edge of the Red Sea, and Moses was afraid the day he walked into Pharaoh's court. The fear did not leave. The presence of I Am made the fear irrelevant. That is the invitation. Not to be unafraid. To go anyway. Because before you get there, I Am is already there. I will be what I will be means God is always arriving in your future ahead of you, preparing the ground, already present in the moment you have not yet reached. Stop. Right now, in the middle of whatever is moving fast around you, is stop, and say it out loud if you can. You are I Am. You are here. I turn aside to see this. I do not walk past the bush, because the ground beneath your feet may look like ordinary desert sand. It may look like nothing is happening here. But God gave Moses those instructions at the burning bush before anything had changed in Egypt, before one plague had fallen, before one Israelite had packed a single bag. God called Moses to the impossible future while Moses was still standing in the ordinary present. And God is calling you the same way. Not from the other side of the breakthrough, from the middle of the waiting, because I will be. What I will be means He is already in the place He is taking you. He does not wait until you arrive to show up. He is already there. The name that was spoken at the burning bush is still being spoken, not in audible Hebrew over a desert mountain in Midian, but in the language your spirit recognizes. In the moment, you get quiet enough to stop running and turn aside and look. In the place where the ordinary thing is burning without being consumed, and you almost missed it because you were managing the flock and keeping the routine, and you did not expect the divine to show up in something that small and that close. That is always where it shows up. Not in the grandiose, In the specific, in the ground you are standing on right now. Take your sandals off. You are standing on holy ground, not church ground, not ground that was holy before you got there. The ground became holy because I Am showed up in it. And wherever you are right now, whatever room, whatever city, whatever situation, I Am is in it, which means you are standing on holy ground, whether it feels like it or not. And here is the last thing I want to leave with you before the benediction. The name Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh was God's refusal to be reduced. It was God saying, "You cannot put me in a category that lets you think you have me figured out. You cannot use my name like a formula that produces guaranteed results if you say it the right way. You cannot map me onto the other gods and understand me by comparison. I am not that kind of being. I am the being behind being. I am the existence that makes your existence possible. And when I say I will be with you, I do not mean I will send a representative or arrange favorable circumstances from a distance. I mean the uncaused cause, the one who spoke and everything that exists came into being. I will be with you. That is the God who sent Moses to an empire with a staff in his hand and a stutter in his mouth and 40 years of failure behind him. That is the God who parted the sea and brought water from a rock and fed a multitude in the wilderness. Not because Moses had finally reached a level of spiritual excellence that qualified him for miracles, but because I Am was with him, and that is the God who is with you. Not the God of your best years. Not the God you had access to before you made the mistakes. Not the God you will get to pray to once you have cleaned up the situation enough to deserve the conversation. I Am, right now, in this, with you. You did not watch this video to the end by accident. You were held here by something, and that something has a name. Ehyeh, I will be. I Am, present tense, active, here. Now let me give you one specific thing to carry into this week. Every morning, before you check your phone, before the world loads its demands into your mind, say these words. Say them the way Moses stood in front of the bush, which is to say, with nothing in your hands and nothing to offer except your attention. You are I Am. You are here. I Am available. I am listening. Then wait. 30 seconds of actual stillness. And let the God who names himself as Eternal Presence do what Eternal Presence does when you stop running and turn aside to look. It will not happen the same way twice. That is the whole point of I will be what I will be. He is always going to exceed the form you prepared for. The only thing that does not change is that He is always there. Go back to the comments right now and type I will be with you. Let those words be the declaration you carry out of this video and into the rest of your week. And if you know someone who is in the backside of their own desert right now, someone who has been waiting a long time and is starting to wonder if the waiting is the whole story, share this video with them, because the bush is still burning and God is still calling names. And sometimes the most significant thing we do for someone is make sure they do not walk past it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell, because we are not done. There is more. There is always more. When the God you are studying has no bottom and no edge and no end. And now, receive this. May you know the name that cannot be contained. Not as a theological concept, but as a living presence that moves with you through every day of your life. May the bush that does not burn remind you that the fire of God inhabits you without consuming you. May I will be what I will be the answer to every version of who am I that you have ever whispered in the dark. May you find the holy ground beneath your ordinary feet. May you hear your own name spoken twice. with urgency and with intimacy and with purpose. By the one who knew you before the wilderness began and knows you still and will know you long after the wilderness is behind you. Go, and do not be afraid, because I am has sent you, and I am does not send people alone. But wait, before the benediction, I want to linger in one more corner of this text, because there is a dimension of Ehyeh, Ehyeh that most teachings skip over. And it is the dimension that personally undoes me every time I return to it. Go back to the moment Moses is standing at the bush. After God has explained the whole mission, after Moses has said, "Who am I?" and God has said, "I will be with you." God gives Moses a sign, not a miracle, not a demonstration of power, a sign. God says, "This shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Read that carefully. The sign God gives Moses is something that has not happened yet. The confirmation that God sent Moses will only become visible after Moses has already obeyed. The proof comes after the step, not before it. Stop right there. God essentially says, the evidence that I am real and that I called you will be available to you on the other side of the obedience you are afraid to give. This is not cruelty. This is the nature of faith in a God who names himself as I will be. If God showed you the burning bush and then showed you the parted sea and then invited you to take the first step, you would not be walking by faith. You would be walking by evidence. And a God who is I am, a God who is present tense existence itself, is always going to call you into territory that requires you to trust what you cannot yet see. Because the very act of trusting is the thing that expands your capacity to contain what he is bringing. The sign is on the other side. It always is. Abraham left a country without knowing the destination. Noah built a boat before anyone could see the rain. The Israelites stepped into the Red Sea before the water moved. The sign was always on the other side of the step. And Moses on the backside of that desert was being invited into the same logic, the same terrifying and beautiful logic. Go, and the evidence will meet you when you get there. Because I am is already there ahead of you. I want you to think about the thing you have been waiting for permission to do. The thing you have been asking God to confirm before you take the step. The thing you have been praying to feel certain about before you commit. I am not telling you to be reckless. I am not telling you to ignore wisdom. But I am asking you, is it possible that the sign you are looking for is located on the other side of the step you have been waiting to take? Is it possible that God has already been clear enough, and the only thing remaining is the decision to turn aside and look, to say, "Here I am," to take off the sandals and acknowledge that even this ordinary ground is already holy because I am is already in it? Moses went, with the objections still echoing in his head, with the fear still present in his body, with no visible proof that anything he had been told at the bush would actually hold up when he stood in front of Pharaoh. Moses went, and I am was there, every step of the way. In the plagues and the pushback and the hardened heart and the impossible sea and the bread that fell from the sky and the water from the rock, I am was there, being what Moses needed at the precise moment Moses needed it, which is the exact definition of Ehyeh Asher. Ehyeh, I will be what I will be. In the form the moment requires, at the time the moment demands, with a precision that only an I am who exists outside of time could manage. That is the God of the burning bush. That is the God who is with you right now. In the middle of your particular wilderness, on your particular mountain, in front of your particular bush that may or may not seem to be burning but has not gone out. The name is still being spoken. The fire is still going. And you are not as far from the burning bush as you think. You are standing right in front of it, and all that is required is the decision Moses made. The quiet, enormous, history-altering decision to stop and turn aside. And look, here I am. Say it. Mean it. Let it be the sound of your running stopping. Because I am is waiting on those words, not waiting impatiently, not waiting with conditions attached, just waiting, the way a fire waits in a bush, burning steadily, perfectly still, illuminating the dark, consuming nothing, ready the moment you turn to look. Here I am. You called. I turned aside. I am not walking past the bush. That is where your story changes. Not in the moment the sea parts, not in the moment Pharaoh lets the people go. Right here, right now, in the turning aside. And I am will be there to meet you.